All right. I will call this meeting of the Senate Judiciary Committee to order on Friday, March 26th, 2021. Would the esteemed secretary please take the roll?
Vice Chair Cannizzaro.
She's on her way. Please mark her present when she arrives. And as always, I will try to make note of it as well.
Senator Orenshaw.
Here.
Senator Harris.
Here.
Senator Settlemyre.
Here.
Senator Hansen.
Here.
Senator Pickard.
Here.
Chair Scheibel.
Here. Thank you so much. Please let the record also reflect that we are joined by our committee analyst, Patrick Guinan. And as always, our committee counsel, Nick Anthony, remains available to us to answer questions, though he is not here at the meeting today. We have 2 bills to hear. We also may be getting some additional BDRs. We introduced one on the floor this morning, go us, but we still have a few more that are out there. So I may be interrupting the hearings to get that done so we can process them in the most timely fashion. But other than that, this meeting will run as usual. And for those of you who are listening in, same process as always for clicking on the participate button in order to register to testify, and you'll be provided with the phone number to do that. I would like to go ahead and get started. I will open up the hearing on SB 161 and turn it over to our special guest, Senator Spearman.
Thank you. And I'm special, huh? Is that a good special or a bad special?
The best kind of special.
Okay. Good afternoon, Chair Scheibel and committee members. Thank you for the opportunity to present Senate Bill 161. For the record, I am Pat Spearman, representing Senate District 1 in Clark County. Senate Bill 161 was requested by the Sunset Committee of the Legislative Commission, and it was my pleasure to serve as chair of the subcommittee during the 2019-2020 interim. The bill proposes to eliminate the advisory committee to study laws concerning sex offender registration, which is the advisory committee, and transfer its duties to the Advisory Commission on the Administration of Justice. On January 10th, 2020, at the first meeting of the subcommittee, this interim, the subcommittee chose 15 entities to be reviewed during the interim, and one of those was the advisory committee. The advisory committee was selected to review because it had never been reviewed by the subcommittee, and it had not held a meeting since October 2nd, 2018, despite the law requiring it to meet at least twice per year. The subcommittee reviewed the advisory committee at its meeting on February 21st, 2020. Jessica Adair, Chief of Staff, Office of the Attorney General, and Katie Brady, Deputy Attorney General, testified before the subcommittee on behalf of the advisory committee, and they presented the recommendation that the study of sex offender registration laws should take place within the Advisory Commission of the Administration of Justice, of the NRS 176.0123. The Nevada Sentencing Commission, NRS 176, the Department of Sentencing Policy, or perhaps both entities, for the following reasons. Number 1, the advisory committee's narrow scope leaves out many critical issues. And number 2, membership of the advisory committee lacks certain stakeholders. The Attorney General is a member of both the ACAJ and the Nevada Sentencing Commission. On August 31st, 2020, the subcommittee voted unanimously to recommend to the Legislative Commission a bill draft request to eliminate the advisory committee and to transfer its duties to the ACAJ, the Nevada Sentencing Commission, or both entities. The subcommittee, as the representatives from the Office of Attorney General, did not express a preference between ACAJ or the Nevada Sentencing Commission for transfer of these duties. That said, I am supportive of the bill as drafted. Senate Bill 161 has no fiscal impact. And at this point, Madam Chair, I would like to turn the bill presentation over to Ms. Adair and Mrs. Brady from the Office of the Attorney General. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Jessica Adair for the record, Thank you so much, Senator Spearman, for that introduction. I am joined today by Deputy Attorney General Katie Brady, who is an expert in laws regarding sex offender registration and has been instrumental in litigation regarding the Adam Walsh Act. I would like to note that Senator Spearman is correct. This committee was unable to meet in years 2019 and 2020 due to lack of ability to make quorum. We did not have certain members from various organizations appointed by those organizations, and thus we were unable to make quorum and hold a meeting. Just a bit of history about the Advisory Commission, the Advisory Committee. The Advisory Committee to study laws regarding concerning sex offender registration has now been in statute for over 10 years. In that time, while the committee did thoroughly examine federal and state sex offender registration statutes, it never sought to substantially alter or repeal the Adam Walsh Act as it applies to adult offenders. Registration continues to be an important topic for examination, but the committee's narrow scope leaves out many other critical issues, such as lifetime supervision for offenders, pre-sentence psychosexual evaluations conducted by the Division of Parole and Probation and their effectiveness, recidivism rates and reduction, prevention of sexual offenses, victim services, offender services, and others. Another important feature of the Advisory Committee is the lack of certain stakeholders in its membership, as Senator Spearman just mentioned. The statute does not require a representative of the Department of Public Safety or the Central Repository, the Department of Corrections, the Department of Parole and Probation, or the State Board of Parole Commissioners. These agencies play a critical role in the implementation of any sex offender registration requirements, yet are not statutory required members of the Advisory Committee. The statute also does not require any judges or representation from the courts. It is for these reasons that the Attorney General's Office recommended that the continued study of sex offender registration laws occur within the Advisory Commission on the Administration of Justice. The Department of Corrections and Public Safety are required to assist the committees, which is very helpful in the necessary data collection. And the ACAJ includes relevant stakeholders as well as a broader scope that would incorporate registration requirements into a more comprehensive discussion of how to best address those who have been convicted of sex offenses. The Attorney General is a statutory member of the Advisory Commission on Administration of Justice, and our office looks forward to continuing this critical examination to best protect Nevadans. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for your presentation. Are there any questions from the members of the committee? All right, I don't see any questions, so we will go ahead and move to testimony. We will first take testimony in support of SB 161. Each person will have 2 minutes to speak, and I will turn it over to Mr. Kyle at Broadcast Now to get them queued up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To testify in support of SB 161, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Again, to testify in support of SB 161, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. We are currently taking testimony in support of SB 161. Please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Madam Chair, there are no callers in the queue for support at this time.
All right, thank you for your help. And sorry I called you Mr. Kyle. He is normally here to help us. We appreciate your assistance in his stead. Let's please move to testimony in opposition to SB 161.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To testify in opposition of SB 161, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Again, to testify in opposition of SB 161, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Madam Chair, there are no callers in the queue at this time for opposition. Apologize for that.
No need to apologize. Thank you for your help. I see Senator Settlemeyer trying to get our attention. Go ahead.
Madam Chair, considering that this was an interim bill and was put out by that interim committee in a bipartisan way, and since we are getting closer to deadlines, and again, since this is a non-sponsored bill by an individual, I was wondering if you'd entertain the concept of due pass.
Well, first I'd like to finish the hearing and then we can return to that question. So broadcast, if we could have testimony in the neutral position on SB 161.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To testify in neutral on SB 161, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Again, to testify in neutral on SB 161, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. We are currently taking testimony in neutral position of SB 161. Please press *9 now to take your place in the queue for neutral testimony. Madam Chair, there are no callers in the queue for neutral testimony at this time.
All right, thank you so much. In that case, I will now close the hearing on SB 161. We're not going to move the bill today. We will do that if we are going to do it in a later work session with a number of other bills. We still have time before the deadline. So we appreciate you joining us, Ms. Adair, Ms. Brady, and that closes the hearing on SB 161. And we will now move on to our next agenda item, which is SB 187. We will again return to our special guest, who we're very happy to have with us, Senator Spearman, to introduce that bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, I'm still Pat Spearman, representing Senate District 1. I'm honored to come before you again today, this time to present Senate Bill 187, which seeks to continue the work I began in 2017 with the Senate Bill 402 to reduce and hopefully one day eliminate the use of solitary confinement in our correctional system. Specifically, SB 187 requires the collection of relevant data that has been unavailable up to now, and it implements recommendations made by the Vera Institute of Justice based on the findings of a multi-year study. The study was conducted in cooperation with Nevada's Department of Corrections on the use of solitary confinement in our state. I have provided a full link to the Vera Institute study as an exhibit today, and I urge the committee members of the public to read it. Before I discuss Senate Bill 187, it is important for you to know the context surrounding solitary confinement. Solitary confinement is a form of isolation in which an inmate is deprived of any human contact, with the exception of prison staff, often for 22 to 24 hours a day. This isolation can last up for 1-2 days or to several decades. The psychological and physiological effects of solitary confinement have been exhaustively documented for years, dating back to the 1800s. What we consistently find is that solitary confinement can cause any number of mental disorders, enhance existing disorders, negatively impact rehabilitative efforts, and increase depression and suicidal ideation. It has profound physical effects ranging from increased headaches, heart palpitations to dizziness, hypertension, muscle pain, and weight loss, and the list goes on. As I mentioned, in 2017, after several amendments were made, I was able to pass Senate Bill 402. Among other provisions, SB 402 prohibits the Department of Corrections from imposing solitary confinement unless an offender is found guilty of an infraction, is provided written notice of the charges, and a hearing is held after an investigation of the alleged violation. The bill also prohibits Department of Corrections from putting offenders with serious mental illness or other significant mental impairment in solitary confinement unless an offender poses a safety threat to him or herself, the staff or other inmates, and it requires a psychological evaluation of an offender with a serious mental illness or impairment prior to holding the hearing concerning the charges against the offender. Department of Corrections is also required to provide certain provisions and accommodations to an offender in disciplinary segregation, and the use of solitary confinement must be limited to the shortest time possible to address the issue at hand. The bill also allows an offender to petition the warden for early release from solitary confinement or from disciplinary segregation if he or she has demonstrated good behavior. That was 2017. And so where are we today? Well, first, we have virtually no data to tell us how or if SB 402 was implemented. What we do have is the Vera Institute study and recommendations that I mentioned earlier, which indicates, number one, that the use of solitary confinement, also known in Nevada as various types of segregation, administrative, disciplinary, etc., continues unabated today. And two, there are concrete steps we can take to understand how it is being used and how to move towards eliminating this harmful, inhumane practice. That is why I have introduced Senate Bill 187, and here is what the bill does. First of all, sections 2 through 10 of the bill provide clarifying definitions of terms related to solitary confinement, many of which are used across the Department of Corrections, but which are not defined or implemented with any consistency, which makes it very difficult to gather and understand data in any meaningful way, not to mention the difficulty experienced by offenders who are subject to this dizzying list of names for solitary confinement. Section 11 requires the Director of Department of Corrections, with approval from the Board of State Prison Commissioners, to adopt regulations to ensure that solitary confinement is used only as a last resort in the least restrictive manner possible for the shortest time possible. Limit the use of disciplinary segregation to serious Class A offenses as defined in the Department of Corrections Administrative Regulation 707. Prescribe alternate responses and create additional sanctions as responses to less serious offenses, which may not include the loss of visitation or telephone privileges. To create individual plans and strategies in consultation with the offenders who are placed in administrative segregation to get them into less restrictive housing as quickly as possible. These plans are to be holistic in nature and take into account an offender's programming needs, behavioral history, and other contributing factors. Avoid releasing an offender from solitary confinement directly into the community by requiring placement in the general population at least 30 days before releasing, and prioritizing offenders who have been subject to solitary confinement for more than 30 days for re-entering a program at least 1 year ahead of their release date. They must ensure that offenders who are released from solitary confinement spend no more than there is necessary while awaiting housing in the general population. They must evaluate the conditions and use the disciplinary segregation for vulnerable populations such as youth, women, offenders with disability or mental illness, and such evaluations must include analysis of efforts to eliminate the use of solitary confinement. For those with severe mental illness, analysis of efforts to prioritize placement of offenders in less restrictive settings, and a weekly review of vulnerable offenders subject to solitary confinement to assess whether they can be returned to the general population. They must review all offenders subjected to solitary confinement with a mental health evaluation within 24 hours and an evaluation by the Multidisciplinary Classification Committee once a week for the first 60 days and once a month thereafter. They must provide access to behavioral health, transitional, educational, and group programming for those in solitary confinement. Require staff training for those who seek work in solitary confinement units in effective communications, crisis intervention, and de-escalation. Improve overall conditions in solitary confinement by providing at least 2 hours of out-of-cell recreation daily, including structured activity, providing concrete recreation as appropriate depending upon the risk evaluation, and providing telephone access at least once daily between the hours of 8 a.m. and 11 p.m., and providing access to weekly contact visits within the bounds of safety consciousness. They must establish minimum protocols which relating to conditions in behavioral modification unit, also known as BMU, including gathering data on length of stay and re-entry into solitary confinement, authorization of not less than 5 hours per day to be spent outside the BMU, provisions of structured and unstructured recreation time while in the BMU, provisions of socialization and reintegration program while in the BMU, and allowing unrestricted movement while in the BMU. Section 13 deletes current provisions regarding how long an offender may be held in disciplinary segregation and places them with a maximum of 30 days. And very importantly, this section also requires the director of the Nevada Department of Corrections to gather and report to the Advisory Commission on the Administrative Justice by July 1 of each year on information of the number of offenders subjected or assigned to solitary confinement, the periods of time that they were assigned and the reason for assignment, the number of assigned offenders who were found to have a mental illness, the number of assigned offenders broken down by race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, age, gender identity, and expression, the amount of time between an infraction and a hearing to determine whether an offender will be assigned to solitary confinement and the results of the hearing, the dates of any reviews conducted for those assigned to solitary confinement, including reviews of vulnerable populations such as those with disabilities, mental illness, or who are youth and women, and the number of offenders who participated in programming and what type of programming while assigned to solitary confinement. I want to note that all of the information required under this bill regarding offenders is to be provided in aggregate and without any personally identifying information. Madam Chair, with your indulgence, I'd just like to comment again on why we brought Senate Bill 402 in the 2017 session. It was brought to my attention by the then Director of Department of Corrections that when he arrived, he found some seriously mentally ill offenders in solitary confinement, and they had been there for 5 years. We also received information that there was solitary confinement being imposed upon some people who were younger than 18 and also women. In doing further study on what solitary confinement, or I guess the nice word is segregation, but what solitary confinement does, and it has been documented, multiple sessions of solitary confinement can bring on post-traumatic stress equal to that of military personnel who have been in a combat environment for an extended period of time. Now, I know that there are some in our society who say, well, they offended, and that's why they're in jail. Well, pump your brakes, because everybody that's in prison is not guilty of the crime that they've been accused of. We do know that there are some populations that are inordinately represented in the criminal justice system based upon their population or the demographic percentage in wider society. And so I want to start there and say that even if they are guilty, they are still human beings. And we should treat them as such. It doesn't take anything away from the punishment that has been prescribed. But solitary confinement is one of those things. If rehabilitation is the goal, then solitary confinement impinges upon that goal. and it may or may not decide whether or not the offender or the inmate can either progress in that rehabilitative process or not. And so again, 402 was brought because there was an abuse of solitary confinement, not my words, but the words of the then director of the Nevada Department of Corrections. Upon his arrival, seriously mentally ill inmates had been in solitary confinement for 5 years. He also stated that there was not a particular protocol for when they would enter, what would happen while we're there, or when they would come out. And so it was basically subjective. And lest anybody think that I'm picking on the Department of Corrections, I'd also like to remind people that in 2013, I brought a bill that would increase the number of corrections officers in the facilities so that the corrections officers would be able to do their job without harm. And so this is a balanced approach to criminal justice, in my estimation. Solitary confinement used as a very last resort. So this concludes my discussion of the bill itself. Chair Scheibel, and I thank you and the committee for your indulgence. In closing, I would like to remind the committee that in addition to helping us finally get a clear picture of how solitary confinement is actually being used in Nevada and moving toward ending it, this bill also fits within my overarching purpose of this session. The purpose is to expose, attack, and dismantle the structural elements of racism that remain entrenched in our society. We all know that Black and brown people are incarcerated at vastly higher rates than white people in America. And I would argue that the Vera Institute study I've mentioned today makes it clear that in Nevada, solitary confinement disproportionately impacts Black and brown people, as well as makes the goal of returning to society as a whole, healthy, productive person infinitely more difficult. We need to fix this system. In order to do that, we need alternatives to solitary confinement, rehabilitative programming, accountability, and data. And lest anyone say that I'm playing the race card, let me remind you that we have to work with the card that we've dealt, the hand we've been dealt. And so the race card is already in there. That's not me playing it. I'm just acknowledging what is there. And it is a part of the process of growth. And we must make sure every time we see persistent racism, I'm not calling anybody racist. Let me say that again. I am not calling anyone a racist. I'm simply saying that there are structural systems in our society that we have to recognize perpetuate systemic racism. And so in the criminal justice system, and for some people, criminal injustice, and keep in mind I'm a retired military police, so I understand this process. We have to make sure that we call it out wherever and whenever we see it, and we have to make sure that we take appropriate measures to rectify it. There are subsystems within our society that have continually empowered these systemic racism protocols. This is one of them. And so Senate Bill 187 provides these crucial elements of reform, and I would appreciate your support. Madam Chair, I have with me members of the ACLU, and they are available for any technical questions that you or the committee may have. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Senator. We really appreciate that thorough introduction to the bill and your presentation. I also understand that we have Mr. Shepak here from the ACLU, as well as Mr. De Palma to present on the bill. And so I will turn it over to them at this time.
Thank you, Chair Scheibel. Thank you, committee members. My name is Nick Shepak. For the record, I am the...
I'm sorry to interrupt you so soon, but you're very quiet. If you could sit closer to the microphone and make sure you speak up. Thank you.
How is that? Is that better? No?
Not much.
How about now? They had me good before. Now, let's try one thing. How about now? No?
It is about the same. Sorry.
Huh. They tested me. It came in clear. If we want to pass it over to Mary Booser to make her quick comment, I can call in. If
Chair
that is-
Scheibel, he's, Nick's coming through loud and clear on mine, just so you know.
Okay. Why don't you go ahead, Mr. Shepak, and I'll interrupt you again if it gets too quiet.
I appreciate that, and sorry about the trouble. Again, hello, my name is Nick Shepak. For the record, I'm the Policy and Program Associate with the ACLU of Nevada. It is a true pleasure to be here in the Senate Judiciary Committee. It is nice to be more than just a voice in the void. We were very excited when Senator Spearman reached out to us about working on this legislation before this session. Solitary confinement is something near and dear to my heart personally and to our organization. Our office worked closely with Senator Spearman to pass SB 402, which intended to reduce the use of disciplinary segregation, which is the most restrictive form of solitary, but not the only form of solitary. While we do know that NDOC has made some strides in reducing their use of solitary confinement, the complete lack of available data has made monitoring the implementation of that bill impossible. The United Nations has developed minimum standards for housing prisoners. These standards are referred to as the Mandela Rules. The United Nations considers solitary confinement of over 15 days to be torture. They also consider the placement of vulnerable populations, such as individuals with physical and known mental disabilities in solitary for any amount of time, unacceptable. New York has a bill on the governor's desk that meets these standards, and the Colorado's Department of Correction already meets these standards. This bill goes nowhere near that far. In fact, it simply requires NDOC to develop regulations to meet the recommendations from a study they themselves commission. The ACLU has been working on solitary confinement for reform for many years. I have been working with solitary survivors myself for over 3 years now. You will have a chance to meet one in just a minute. His name is Frank De Palma. He spent over 22 years in the Nevada Department of Corrections in solitary state. You will also have a chance to meet Mary Booser, who is an LCSW who worked for over 5 years in solitary units and can answer any questions you might have about solitary and mental health. Some of the VEER's key findings that brought us to this point is that there was a high number of people in solitary units that had mental health needs. There was a very large amount of people being held in solitary longer than they were sentenced because of lack of bed space. And there were significant numbers of people being released directly into the community from solitary confinement or within 30 days of being held in solitary confinement. We know this is makes reentry very difficult. So we wanted to bring forth this piece of legislation. This bill addresses all of those issues and more. We are in talks with the Nevada Department of Corrections. We are aware of some of their concerns. We had a brief meeting with them and then also a brief phone call. They've offered to sit down with us and go through the bill in depth. We haven't had an opportunity to do that yet. They've indicated they have a spreadsheet on the bill. We also haven't seen that, but we're looking forward to it. Some of the concerns they've raised have to do with staffing and the availability of mental health professionals and the cost of implementing some reforms. We're happy to continue to work with them and discuss and find ways to roll this out in a way that they have the time to get the resources they need. It is not our intent to force NDOC to radically change any practices tomorrow. We're looking forward to working with them to find a better, to find solutions that we can all agree upon. And before I turn it over to Frank De Palma, I do want to say that there was a little bit of misinformation I heard on the bill today on the radio. It suggests that we are completely limiting the use of solitary confinement to 30 days. And while we are reducing disciplinary segregation to 30 days, this bill would allow the Department of Corrections, if someone was still deemed a safety risk after they had served their disciplinary time, to place them in administrative segregation, as long as they built a plan with them to make sure that they got the resources they needed and the programming they needed to eventually re-enter back into the general population. And so it is a position of our office and the Justice Reform and Accountability Alliance, a statewide criminal justice reform coalition we are part of, to center the voices of impacted individuals. While I could talk to you forever about solitary confinement and this bill, I'm going to have Mr. De Palma try to explain the realities of solitary confinement to you. I'm available after our presentation to answer any questions about any specifics of the bill. I know it's a big bill. I know it pretty well, so I'm happy to answer any of those questions, but I will pass it over now to Mr. De Palma.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair and committee members. Appreciate you allowing me to be here today. My name is Frank De Palma. This is my first time ever doing this, so please bear with me. I'm very nervous and I'm really afraid. I'm afraid because I'm afraid I won't be able to convey the truth as I lived it and experienced it and can share it at another time. It's too much. But solitary confinement, I promise you, is no good in any way. I don't care by what name you call it, administrative segregation, austere housing, special secure housing, it's all solitary. And I'm one of the few that came back. I spent 22 years and 36 days in solitary confinement. So I believe it was February 2nd or 3rd of 1992 I went in, and I didn't leave that cell until March 2nd, or March 11th, 2014. You add it up, it's 36 days. But it didn't matter to me. There was no sense of time. Time became non-existent. I lived in a blacked out cell, there was only one window, but I had blacked that out for years. Because, as odd as this sounds, the darkness kept me hidden. The darker it was, the less I could be seen. And the darkness became like a blanket of protection to me. And that ain't normal. You know, I got these bullet points here because I stray. One of the problems that I've had since I've been out of prison it's been 2 years, I get scattered, I can't focus, I lose everything, you know, and it's to a degree that it really, I can't accept it. People just make excuses for me, but I can't accept it because something is wrong. I can't grasp a lot of things. I have a complete inability to process certain things. What happened to that ability, I don't know, but I can't get it back. And it hasn't gotten any better since I've been out here. People behind me, it just puts me on edge. I have to sit if I go to a restaurant, I have to sit in an area where my back is against the wall. That hasn't gotten any better. I pretend it has, you know, because I want to fit so bad into society, but I don't feel like I'm a part of society. And it's not because of anything anyone out here has done to me. There's something in me that's different. You know, I spent a total of, you know, 42 years, 9 months, and 15 days in prison. I went in with a 10-year sentence. I was just a normal kid, got in trouble. You know, my dog got killed. And I acted on an emotional moment. My dog was my best friend, and this guy killed my dog. And I drove a truck through his house, his truck. And that got me several charges. And so I ended up having a 10-year sentence in Nevada State Prison. This is in 1975. I turned 19 in prison. I got 10 years for grand larceny. I only had to serve 2.5 years. I had already served 1 year. I'd had 3 fights. You know, that's going to happen. I don't care who you are. And I had established myself as being just, you know, a regular guy. I was low profile. I stood up for myself. I'm minding my own business. Well, 1 year after I'd been there, I was asked to join the Aryan Warriors prison gang by the founder himself. And I said, no, thank you. Well, he is a true narcissist. For me to say no to him, you know, anyway, the word went out, I'm on my own. No one's supposed to help me. One night, which is, I think it was to the day, 1 month after I said no to Pat McKenna. Now, mind you, I'd been in that prison a year already. 1 month to the day, 4 individuals of another gang came in to the cell that I lived in, and the cells were very, very small. You can almost touch them with both hands, both walls. And they tried to turn me into, they tried to rape me. That's what they tried to do. And I hope you'll all agree that I had every right to not let that happen. And I made sure that didn't happen. I hurt 2 guys. One of them happened to be second in command of the black gang. There's a term, green light. When you're green lighted, that means you're going to get killed. And there was a hit out on me. I was green lighted. Nobody was helping me. And things months later, when, let me see, over the next 9 years, it was about 9 or 10 years, there were 37 knife attempts made on me. I mean, guys coming at me to kill me. 37, I'm not counting the fights and what have you. I got stabbed, you know, but I'm still here. How I'm still here, I don't know, you know. But in those years, there was one incident in 1994. When I look back on what I did, I'm appalled at how I could feel justified with my thoughts that I was doing a just thing, the right thing. I truly believe in it. That is how degraded my thought processes and my moral compass had become throughout the years. So then I'm going to fast forward to 1992 is when I'm sure you're all aware during the late 80s and 90s there's an explosion of new gangs, guys breaking off from each other, and the prison administration was afraid that we old timers that had a history were going to come out and end up killing some of these youngsters. Well, it was the complete opposite. There's a code. They respected us and they left us alone. I had been on that yard for like 3 years now, on Ely, and the Ely yard. I transferred from 1989. I'm sorry if I'm a little shaky here. And like I said, one day, some officers came to get me, the CERT team, took me up front. The orders were all the old timers were to be locked up. It was more convenient because there's a whole lot more of these young gangbangers. I'm getting locked up for nothing, you know? So that's when something happened to an officer that I did. He had lied on me. I won't go into it, but the truth of it is, I'd become depraved. I'd become depraved, and that's something I swore I would never do. after the first attempt on me. I mean, there's so much I could tell you. I mean, oh my God. And I could, like the senator that was speaking, she shed a light on a lot of things, but there's a whole lot more to shed light on. But in solitary confinement, where I was placed, I had absolutely no external stimuli. My isolation was extreme, but all of it connects to each other. I lived in a cell, an empty cell, for the first year. I had no books, no radio, no TV, no magazines, not even a Bible. For the first year, I had a pair of boxers and a t-shirt, and I think a pair of socks. I had no mattress for the first year. I slept on the floor on a state blanket. It's okay. When you're like that, we're human beings. We have an innate need to connect with each other, man. We got to have relationships. And if you don't have that, then you're going to connect with whatever's there. Drugs, alcohol, these things I came to realize through experiencing things. And if you take away that innate need, you're starting off on a bad trip. Keeping a person in the cell away from anybody. What happened to me, I lived in my own head. I got to know myself. I was asking myself questions in the early years of having battles with the guards and when they come in to extract you. It's all part of it. But after I had connected with myself, what else was there to connect to? Nothing. So I created fantasies of having relationships with a woman, falling in love, getting married. And these fantasies literally lived on longer and longer and longer, 8-9 months at a time. And now that I'm here before you, which I shouldn't be, because when I left that cell, I had been diagnosed as being semi-catatonic. I had lost touch with all reality. It got to a point where those fantasies that I lived in no longer fulfilled me. They couldn't sustain me. My need for love, empty cells is definitely a place where you learn to live without love. And no one should have to be that way. I don't care who you are. It'd be more humane to put a bullet in somebody's head. It really would. I started to disconnect. And one of the scariest things was a part of me was aware of it, but a part, I couldn't stop it. Because it was just became all so oppressive and suffocating. It's like, imagine screaming in silence, just screaming. God, I can't convey. But finally, it just got quiet. I gave up. I'm never getting out of prison. And I went into a void, an inner abyss that I don't know. I don't understand how I'm here, but now that I am, I can say this. Everybody that comes into prison is dysfunctional in some way. Show me any of us out here who isn't at some point during the day, maybe, dysfunctional. I maintain with all my heart and soul that prisons, especially solitary confinement, instills psychosis. Because I sat there. I wasn't aware of it as it was happening. But when you're alone, you hear somebody call me, and you go up to the door, somebody call me? Nobody answers. finally somebody says, hey, nobody called you. Then why are you talking to me right now? No, you're playing games with me. All right, I'll talk to you another time. They got a problem now. It's that fast. That's the life there. Now I'm starting to lose. I came back. How I came back, I don't know if it's the human spirit or it's God or what. But I came back and I understand what solitary does and how, oh my God. Before I close, if you don't mind, in the 1800s, Charles Dickens toured the Eastern State Penitentiary and the solitary confinement. And he wrote a letter, and I'd like to read it to all of you. Short one. He says, I believe that very few men are capable of estimating the immense amount of torture and agony which this dreadful punishment, prolonged for years, inflicts upon the sufferers. And in guessing at it myself, and in reasoning from what I have seen written upon their faces, and what to my certain knowledge they feel within, I am only the more convinced that there is a depth of terrible endurance in which no one but the sufferers themselves can fathom, and which no man has a right to inflict upon his fellow creature. I hold this slow and daily tampering with the mysteries of the brain to be immeasurably worse than any torture of the mind, and because its ghastly signs and tokens are not so palpable to the eye and sense of touch as scars upon the flesh, because its wounds are not upon the surface, and it extorts few cries that human ears can hear. Therefore, the more I denounce it as a secret punishment, which a slumbering humanity is not roused up to stay. This is Charles Dickens. He wrote this, and that touched me. I said, man, you know. And I just want to ask all of you, just from what I hear, they've done a lot of studies on sensory deprivation, and I think they need to do some more, because I have a couple of guys that I know of that have been in prison for 30 years and what have you. They have the same kind of issues that I have, you know. They did solitary confinement too. So at what point, I know you have a problem with trying to make things work, but the way they got prisons are still racially segregated. You know, they don't teach cultural awareness or racial awareness. They teach class warfare. Prisons, let's face it, they make big money. And people like me are the stock in trade. And I understand capitalism. Hey, I'm all for it. But at what cost? What cost to human lives, regardless of what they've done? I have to beat myself down from judging certain cases that I find are just unacceptable. But then again, who am I to judge? Because I could be judged too for things I've done. We need to come together collectively, people like you and me, because together I can give you insights that you don't have. But if we work together enough to where there's a trust that's developed, you're going to trust what I tell you. You're not going to think, oh, he's just, you know, because I am speaking from my heart and I don't feel like I'm doing a good job. I feel like I'm falling short, because I want you to understand, please, all of you, fight for this bill, man. You know, it's not as complete as it should be, but the goal is to abolish solitary confinement in its all its forms. What are you going to replace it with? That's where we got to get together and, you know, and make it work. But I promise you, if you allow certain inmates that have done time and work together with some of these people, we'll make strides, man. Because I got ideas, I've got proposals, I got so many ideas on what really works. I wasn't prepared to come out of prison. When I came out, the day that I got out, I sat in the van without cuffs on. I kept looking at my hand. Now, I'm out of prison. Oh my God. December 21st, 2018. And when I got to where I was going, which happened to be the parole office, I didn't know that. The officer handed me, the correctional officer handed me a little box with my stuff. I said, well, where do I go? Where do I go? I won't use the words he used, but he said, wherever you want to. And he said, I'll see you when you get back. And I dropped my box and I said, what? You know, and this girl that was there said, hey, come with me. So, you know, in the end, I've been out here 2 years. I'm adjusting a little bit, but there's had issues. And it happened in there. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. De Palma. And I just want to take a moment as the chair of this committee to express my very deep gratitude for you being here today. I think that it is really, as members of this committee, our privilege to get to hear from you, and your experience is unimaginable, and you didn't have to come here and you didn't have to talk to us, but you chose to. And I know that it was scary, and I know that it was hard. And there are, in the work that we do, there are a few days that you just will never, ever forget. And at least speaking for myself, this is one of them. Hearing your story will never leave me. And so I want you to know how much we appreciate you being here, and that you did not just a good job, but an excellent job helping us to understand something that we can never fully understand. So we appreciate you being here, and I hope it's okay that I speak on behalf of the rest of my committee when I say that. I believe we have one more person here, Ms. Buser, to provide some comments as well.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Can you hear me? Whoops. Are you able to hear me? Okay,
Yes,
great. Wonderful. Alrighty. Great. Yes, I just want to, I'm absolutely stunned and deeply moved by everything that Mr. De Palma just shared. And thank you. I think he has conveyed something in a way that really no one else can. Only someone who's been through this can convey what it's really about. And I think anyone not moved by this, there's really something wrong. We've got to do better. But anyway, my name is Mary Buser, and I am a former Assistant Chief of Mental Health in the Solitary Confinement Unit at New York City's Rikers Island. And I would like to tell you about my experience in a solitary confinement unit, and it would be from the perspective of a civilian mental health worker. So on my first day, I well remember my supervisor telling me, if they had no mental health issues before solitary, they do now. Truer words were never spoken. A mental health team is a huge presence in these units, and our job was to dole out medication, antidepressants, anti-anxiety, sleeping pills, antipsychotics, mostly to people who'd never taken any of this prior to solitary. And I remember asking myself, what kind of a punishment is this that people need to be medicated in order to endure it? But it did not end there. When these meds could no longer hold a human psyche together and we were called to a cell door, I have to tell you, it was grim. Inside these cells were makeshift nooses, slashed arms, blood-soaked t-shirts, incoherent babbling, headbanging, and agonized shell-shocked faces begging for a reprieve. And I might add that virtually everyone that we saw on Rikers was Black or Hispanic. I was shocked, frankly, to discover just how grueling this punishment actually is. I was also shocked to learn that roughly 3 out of 4 people that I spoke with inside these cells was there for a non-violent infraction. Prior to this assignment, I thought solitary confinement was for the baddest of the bad. One man I now know and work with spent 3 months in solitary for having too many bed sheets. Though that was close to 30 years ago, the PTSD he developed as a result is something he lives with to this day. In many cases, I discovered that solitary confinement is simply a convenient management tool. That is not to say that there are not violent people inside these cells, but mounting evidence shows that placing them in isolation only increases violent propensities. And let's not forget that most will ultimately be released back to the community. Obviously, jails and prisons must be kept safe, but solitary confinement, a practice deemed by the UN as torture after 15 days, is not the solution. Other countries, as well as a growing number of US states, are safely implementing humane alternatives. The passage of SB 187 would be a big step in that same safe and humane direction. And since Mr. De Palma ended with a quote of a famous figure, I too would like to do the same. And I think it's very important to have heard the words of the late Senator John McCain, who was famously held as a POW in Vietnam. While there, he was also held in solitary confinement. He had this to say, and I quote, "It crushes your spirit and weakens your resistance more effectively than any other form of mistreatment." And this comes from a man who was regularly beaten, denied adequate medical treatment for 2 broken arms, a broken leg, and chronic dysentery, and tortured to the point of having an arm broken again. So that certainly comes from a very, very, shall we say, credible source. And we decry what happened to him in Vietnam. And we have to be looking at the very same practice that's happening inside our jails and prisons, especially when humane alternatives are available. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And I was so moved I forgot to mention that for the record, Vice Judge Canizaro has joined us. Please let the record reflect that she's present. And at this point in time, Senator Spearman had to go, but we do still have Mr. Shepak here to answer any technical and policy questions about the bill. And I will open it up for questions from the committee now. Senator Orenshaw.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you to Mr. De Palma, Mr. Shepak, Ms. Buser, and Senator Spearman for bringing this bill. There's an old quote of the author Dostoevsky that says, if you want to judge a society and judge how civilized it is, go walk into one of its prisons and look at conditions and how people are treated. And I think that's certainly we hear today how true that is. My question about the bill, the proposed regulations on solitary confinement to be approved by the Board of Prison Commissioners, are there no regulations currently in place at Nevada Department of Corrections in terms of how long someone can be kept in solitary confinement, whether there's review of why they're there and how they're doing there?
Thank you for the question, Senator Orenshaw and Nick Shepak, for the record. The department does have internal regulations around things such as disciplinary segregation. So they do have, right now they have up to a year somebody can spend, they allow them to make good time credits. However, there are no regulations limiting what they call ad seg, which is essentially the same thing. It's solitary confinement. You may have access to a few more items, maybe a radio, something you would not have in the other cell, but it's still, right now in the Department of Corrections, they get 5 hours out of cell time a week is the average. And so not even an hour a day. And people can be in ADSEG for years. Things have changed since Mr. De Palma was released, but that was 2018 when he was released. So people can be held in administrative segregation indefinitely. And that is one thing we're looking to change here. And so some of the things the bill does to help with this, what Vera recommended is that there are individuals, especially in ADSEG, who are able to congregate together, right? And those individuals should have out of cell time together. This would increase the ability to have more people out of cell more often. But to your question directly, there are very few regulations around how long somebody can be held in solitary.
I appreciate the bill. Thank you to Senator Spearman. Thank you, Mr. Shepak. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions from members of the committee? All right, not seeing any questions, we will move on to testimony in support of SB 187. Each person will have 2 minutes to speak, and as always, you're also welcome to just say that you agree with somebody who testified previously. Broadcast, if you could please get us our first person to testify in support.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To testify in support of SB 187, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Again, to testify in support of SB 187, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits, 151. Please slowly state your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good afternoon. Thank you for your time and your opportunity to speak today. My name is Denise Bolaños, DENISE BOLANOS, and today I am speaking in representation of Return Strong in support of SB 187. As a nation, we experienced just a little bit of what it feels like to be in forced social isolation during the initial stages of the COVID pandemic, and have seen increased rates of anxiety, depression, and a general decline in mental health in response to this crisis nationwide. Now imagine living that in a 6x10 concrete cell with no windows and without the basics we have in our homes, such as a shower and a kitchen, to name just a few. You're fed through a slot in the door, and you shower at your sink with no access to anybody on the outside, with only the company of your thoughts around the clock in an already stressful and chaotic environment. Rates of suicide and self-harm are higher among incarcerated persons who are in solitary confinement compared to that of the general prison population, and the psychiatric effects of this form of torture can last a lifetime. Khalif Browder spent 3 years in jail because his family could not afford bail after being arrested in 2010 at the age of 16 for a crime he did not commit, which was an injustice on its own. But then, during his imprisonment, he spent 2 years in solitary confinement, where he was starved, denied showers, and beaten. He was finally released from prison when charges against him were dropped, and 2 years later, he committed suicide by hanging himself in his parents' home after multiple suicide attempts while in prison and after his release. Black and brown people, as well as those with disabilities and mental health issues, are disproportionately affected by solitary confinement, just as they are by mass incarceration. SB 187 demands transparency and would hold NDOC accountable for their use of solitary confinement by implementing clearer guidelines, definitions, and restrictions that the department must adhere to when imposing this on an incarcerated person, while also protecting the basic human rights of those that are in solitary confinement. We understand the need to impose disciplinary measures when the need arises. However, those individuals should still be able to eat, to shower, to contact their families, and to program, as taking this away only creates more issues than it solves. Thank you.
Caller with the last 3 digits, 318. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good afternoon, Chair Scheibel and members of the Senate Judiciary. This is Kendra Birchie, Kendra Bertschy with Washoe County Public Defender's Office. Today I am testifying on behalf of my office as well as the Clark County Public Defender's Office. The true measure of our character is how we treat the poor, the disfavored, the accused, the incarcerated, and the condemned. As Brian Stevenson said, and I believe that this bill will allow our state to ensure that we are treating prisoners humanely. Prisoners are people who deserve to be treated humanely. As we learned during the last legislative session from the Crime and Justice Institute, when they took a look at our prison population, the number of individuals who've been admitted to prison over the years has dramatically increased. In the time that they reviewed our records, the mental health needs has increased over 35%, and more than half of the female admitted to prison presented mental health needs. We often hear that the goals of sentencing include rehabilitation of the offender, protection of the community, and punishment. But punishment does not mean breaking and destroying a human being beyond repair. As we heard, solitary confinement is so much more than just a punishment. It's simply inhumane. And unfortunately, we've known that for several decades. Back in 1890, the United Supreme Court has stated in the case in Re Medley, Medley, the citation for that is 134 U.S. 160 at page 168, where it describes the effects of solitary confinement and how we knew even way back then that those who had no prior history of mental illness suffer from damaging effects, which include their own death, but more importantly, that even if they are able to be released from prison, they still have those impacts, which you heard today. I am so grateful that Mr. De Palma was able to testify as to why this bill is necessary to protect our citizens in prison. With this bill, you can protect that young 19-year-old who is just trying to serve his time and get back out safely and return to society. Thank you for your time and attention today.
Caller with the last three digits, 833. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good afternoon. My name is Jennifer Henry, 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 and I am here in support of SB 187. I am a teacher and have 2 people incarcerated in Nevada. My best friend since childhood and a brother of 3 of my previous students. A few years ago, my friend spent several months in the hole for a fight that broke out on the tier, and he was forced to defend himself. It has been a learning experience for me to really start to understand that his experience is typical in some ways and yet completely atypical in others. In preparation to speak to you today, I asked him what it had been like to be in solitary. He expressed that time had been the longest in his life. Even though for him it was only a few months, the impact on his mental health was significant. He said he tried to occupy his mind and read every book that he could get his hands on over and over. He prayed. He isn't someone usually prone to mental health issues. He's never had that history, but while he was there, he said the depression was so severe that he began to contemplate killing himself and actually actively began making a plan to do it. He's normally a social person and has very strong ties to his family, who is from Mexico. His interaction with them has always been a consistent part of his life, but in the whole, not only are your movements restricted to 23 hours in the cell and 1 hour out, but there are all types of other things that are restricted, phone calls being one of them. In the whole, he got 1 15-minute call a week, if they gave him the phone. Maintaining relationships with his family and his boys, who were 11 and 7 at the time, became impossible. Solitary confinement, that time in the hole, changed him, his brain, his relationships with his family, everything that made him him. It is an inhumane practice, and while SB 187 doesn't go far enough, in my opinion, it is a huge step in the right direction. I'm here in support of SB 187. Thank you.
Caller with the last three digits, 080. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Hi, Jim Hoffman, Nevada Attorneys for Criminal Justice. NACJ supports SB 187. As Mr. De Palma said so powerfully, solitary confinement is torture. Solitary confinement leads to severe mental health problems. In one study of the New York City jail system, the 7% of inmates who were in solitary confinement accounted for 50% of suicide attempts. In addition to the moral argument, solitary confinement is extremely expensive. Another study found that putting a prisoner in solitary confinement for a year costs $78,000, triple the cost for holding a prisoner in general population. Studies have also shown that solitary confinement is disproportionately used against people of color, LGBT people, and people with disabilities. This is particularly true of trans people, who often can't be housed in general population for safety reasons, and so are punished by being put into solitary simply for being trans. Solitary confinement is not a practice that makes either prisons or society as a whole safer. The bill today does not actually end the practice, but it places substantial limits on its use. While NACJ believes that we must go further, half a loaf is better than none, and so we support SB 187 as a good first step. Thank you.
Caller with the last 3 digits, 468. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairman. Thank you, and committee. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today. My name is Tina Megason, M-E-G-A-S-O-N, and I am speaking in favor of SB 187 and Return Strong. Imagine for a moment that you have bipolar depression, drug addiction, and a history of trauma, including confinement. You are now a criminal for these reasons. Suddenly, you are being taken away after being falsely accused of a horrible crime. Others around are telling authorities that you didn't do this thing. Nevertheless, you are taken and transported to another location and placed in solitary confinement. Over the next 4 days, you ask every CO, your only contact, for basic items. You're ignored. You're allowed to shower only 1 time during this period, and all you have is a towel. That's all you're given. You can't even wash your underwear because if you leave it off to dry, you will face an additional charge. After all this time on day 4, you're now not only asking, you're now begging for clean clothes, hygiene products, and something as basic as a spoon to eat with. Have you ever eaten oatmeal with your fingers? It's humiliating at best. But on day 4, you get lucky. A compassionate new CO brings you a spoon. God bless her. A family member has to call the IG's office to see why you are being treated less than a human being. Within 2 days of the call, thank God, you are put in a less restrictive unit, but you were terrified, not scared, terrified, because this exact thing had happened to you before, but you spent 3 months in solitary waiting for it to be investigated and resolved. And by the way, you were cleared of that. It was all for nothing. So now try to imagine that you or your loved one is in that dark place where you start to question even being a human being. I'm sure that's going to be hard for some of you, but please try so you can see this side. It happens more than you know. Think about this later today, maybe when you get home this evening and you look at your family or yourself in the mirror. The mission statement of the Nevada prisons indicate that their missions are to reform, educate, train, and treat people to help them return successfully to society. Solitary confinement is not conducive to this mission in any way whatsoever. Breaking a person's spirit is all that solitary confinement does. And I appreciate all of your testimony, Mr. De Palma. God bless you. Thank you.
Caller with the last 3 digits, 209. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Ashley White, A-S-H-L-E-Y-W-H-I-T-E. Good afternoon. My name is Ashley, and I'm here in support of SB 187. I currently reside in Senate District 10. I believe this bill needs to be passed so that it can stop damaging families and relationships that children have and establish with their parents. Children and families create bonds and get dependable on going and visiting with their parents, and as a family, and then solitary happens. And now the families must experience separation, depression, anxiety, and fear. I personally have seen it myself with my 6-year-old daughter as she got very close to her father and looked forward and was excited to go see Daddy every weekend. Now I have to see her sad and say how much she misses Daddy and wishes he was here. Some nights she lays next to me and cries herself to sleep, and all she can say is I miss Daddy. I just want to see him. I hope he is safe. I want him home. All I can do is hold her as she is crying and try to stay strong and not cry myself. Our relationship even got closer and our bond got stronger through visits every weekend. He has gone through severe depression and anxiety, which he already had, but it has caused him to have to take even more medication just to feel okay. Consequences should not be punished with family separation. Being estranged from a parent or loved one is extremely hard and takes a huge toll on you mentally, physically, and emotionally, and it's not healthy to anyone involved. So I ask that you please say yes and get SB 187 passed so we can stop tearing families apart more than they already are. We should want to unite families, not create and cause separation. Thank you.
Caller with the last 3 digits, 499. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Hello, my name is Jody Hocking, Hocking, and I am here today in support of SB 187. I do have a loved one that's incarcerated who has spent over 14 years in solitary confinement. But today, I want to take a moment to talk about someone that's important to me, a man whose name is Terry Clark. He's in medical isolation at NNCC. Terry is one of our members of Return Strong, and he's terminally ill. He has stage 4 cancer, and it's been denied compassionate release. He probably won't make it to a pardons board. The governor's been unwilling to hear his case or provide relief for him, even as the tumors in his lungs protrude from his chest, and he's been forced to punch himself in the face in order to make himself bleed to the point that medical staff thought he was coughing up blood in order to get him to the hospital for treatment. I know today is about banning the box and about solitary confinement, so let me connect those dots for you. Terry's been in medical isolation at NNCC due to the complex array of issues that his diagnosis causes. In isolation, he can't get a food package or order store to accommodate his dietary needs, which are significant, while undergoing treatment for cancer and pain medications for his broken ribs that came as a result of the tumors. He can't buy batteries for an MP3 player in order to listen to music or provide solace for him during this time. He has very limited use of the phone to be able to talk about his needs with his family or get any help with his compassionate release application. He's had virtually no human contact over the past year, no mental, physical, spiritual, or social interaction. He's been forced to slowly die in pain and isolation. New York recently passed their Halt Solitary bill, which bans isolation for anyone that's part of a special population, which Terry would be a part of. I really am keeping my statements brief today, and I want to leave reminding the committee that solitary confinement isn't always just discipline, and that human isolation is unnatural, destructive, and as a state, we have to begin to acknowledge and take responsibility for the damage that we as a society are allowing to happen to human beings that are in our care. I'm in support of SB 187 for the huge steps it takes to move towards the end of solitary confinement and isolation, and for taking the steps necessary to force NDOC to be transparent and accountable for their actions for the human beings in their care. Thank you.
Caller with the last 3 digits, 130. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes.
Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Christine Saunders. That's CHRISTINE SAUNDERS, and I'm the Policy Director with Progressive Leadership Alliance of Nevada, here in support of Senate Bill 187. I want to echo the testimony of those who so eloquently spoke before me. Solitary confinement has enormous impacts on mental health, making it even more difficult for individuals to adjust to reentry. We must ensure that we do not misuse solitary confinement and only use the practice as a last resort. SB 187 simply requires that NDOC adopt the recommendations from the VERA study, of which they were a part of, and will help provide the state a picture of solitary confinement in the state. We urge your support of the bill.
Caller with the last 3 digits, 936. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jamila Lewis. That is spelled Jameelah. Last name Lewis, Lewis. Thank you all for having me again here today. I do need to be very transparent and let you all know that everything that I say is a reflection of my own thoughts and opinions and does not reflect that of the agency I work for. Now, I am a PREA advocate here in our state, and I am in support of this bill today, specifically because not only is ADSEG used as a form of punishment, but also as a form of retaliation. As someone mentioned, ADSEG is used for a various amount of things, for people who identify as trans, but also for people who are going through an investigation regarding sexual violence. Oftentimes, what is supposed to happen according to the PREA standards is that the person who has done the harm is put into solitary confinement while the investigation is happening, which is supposed to happen within 30 days. But oftentimes, because some of the most vulnerable people who are going to be violated due to sexual violence is also people who identify as trans, which means that my trans clients are often sent to ADSEG. And because that they're sent to ADSEG, they usually have a host of things, feelings of depression, suicidal ideation, and so on and so forth. So based off of this bill, I do have a few questions. In section 13, paragraph 2, it does mention voluntary and involuntary segregation, but it doesn't say what the time limit is for that. And I'd like that to be addressed in the future, because if we're going to send people there involuntary or voluntary, there needs to be a time limit and a reason and a justification to why, as well as in section 13, paragraph 5A. It does mention that if someone wants to get their belongings and access to their personal belongings again, they would have to submit a kite or a request to the warden, but it does not mention when the warden will have to see that request and when that will be processed. Specifically, again, for my clients who are trans, they're often separated from their belongings, meaning their underwear, access to lipstick, hair care products, soap, hygiene, and so on. So I would like to see that be expanded on in this bill, but I do thank you all for hearing me. And again, I do support this bill. Have a nice day.
Caller with the last 3 digits, 722. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin. Again, caller with the last 3 digits, 722. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. Caller with the last 3 digits, 117. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You may begin.
My name is Nicole Williams, Williams, and my loved one is incarcerated at NDOC. We also had a close friend that spent a year in solitary confinement a few years ago. Today, I want to share his story. Prior to my husband's incarceration, I really believed that solitary confinement was for serious, violent behavior that couldn't be addressed any other way. I guess I thought it was like for Hannibal Lecter, you know, the extreme needs for safety. Unfortunately, I've learned the hard way that isn't the truth. Our friend was at camp in 2016 and was accused of selling contraband. He was immediately moved from camp to one of the prisons.
Hello.
Caller 117, you may continue. I'm sorry, Madam Chair. It looks like that caller dropped off. I will continue.
Thank you.
Caller with the last 3 digits, 722. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Hello.
Go ahead, caller.
Hello? Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, caller. You may begin.
Yes. This is Mercedes Maharis, Mercedes Maharis, Las Vegas, Nevada. I'm a member of the Nevada Silver-Haired Legislative Forum, Senate District 3, Central Las Vegas. I am not speaking on behalf of the forum, however. I'm speaking independently, and I am a Nevada chaplain. I'm here to support SB 187. Thank you, Senator Spearman, for your eloquent presentation, and especially thank you for Mr. DePalma for coming forward. First, I spent about 15 minutes in a visit to Unit 8 SDCC, Southern Desert Correctional Center, in about 2001. My heart still palpitates when I think about that time. And to this day, I've been speaking out on behalf of all those who suffer, especially in solitary confinement in our Nevada prisons. I support this bill, but with changes. First, as a background in education, I knew immediately that this is a faulty social system that we're dealing with from day one in criminal justice and in the prison system. It does not support in any way, I can't give credit in any way to the 5 key elements of health, which I think we're supposed to be rehabilitating people, but I haven't seen it really happening to hardly any extent since in the last 20 years. We need to make penalties in this bill. I don't see any penalties for prison personnel not enforcing the law, which SB 402, I'm the office manager for the former Senator Sagerbloom, and the past year we've seen quite a number of letters coming from those in Unit 8, SDCC. I guess I've come full circle. They have disrespected in their letters, which I can send you if it's not too late, SB 402 due processes. So please put some kind of penalty against the prison administration for not paying attention to laws. And this is not just the only area where there's a problem and they don't follow their own administrative segregation, administrative regulations. I can't.
You're a little bit past 2 minutes of testimony, if you could wrap it up. And certainly feel free to send us any other additional documentation or written testimony you would like to provide.
Okay. The other is that I can't support 30 days in no way, shape, or form because it's
all right. We appreciate that. And then we'll wrap up. So thank you for your testimony.
Caller with the last 3 digits, 271. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Tammy Irvine, TamiIrvine. I am from District 3. I am here in support of SB 187. I have a loved one who's incarcerated at the NDOC, and during his incarceration, I have really began to see and understand the ripple effect prison has on families and communities. He has never been in trouble while incarcerated, but over the past year, COVID has been a destructive force on our family. It has given me a new understanding of how much pain isolation causes. While in quarantine and isolation mean one thing in the free world, it means something else for incarcerated people. For them, it means further disconnect from all human contact. People in prison are spending months in quarantine and lockdown, which have been severe forms of isolation beyond solitary confinement. They are losing contacts with family, often having 30 minutes every 72 hours to make food, call family, and take a shower. They have lost their freedom of movement. They are not at a home with their families. They are isolated in a 6x10 cell, sharing with one other person. Even though they are not in the hole for disciplinary reasons, the impact is the same, but maybe worse. The trauma associated with the degree of isolation doesn't go away once the door is open and they walk into the free world. The impact of solitary confinement will bleed into our communities and society. If we continue barbaric practices and dehumanizing people, we will continue to pay the price individually and throughout society. We have to do better than this. Prison is supposed to be for them to have rehabilitation and not torture. I am in support of SB 187 and the changes it proposes to solitary confinement. Thank you.
Caller with the last 3 digits, 963. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Hi, my name is Eric Garcia, ERICGARCIA. Why I think solitary confinement is wrong. Back in 2006, when I went to prison, I went to the hole, and that's slang for solitary confinement. I went to the hole and for a murder that I didn't commit on the yard. And what it does to you is it deprives you of senses. It deprives you of senses. You know, it takes away from your senses, and it doesn't let you feel. It doesn't let you see. You know, it doesn't let you think correctly. You lose track of time. You know, here it was May, and I didn't even know my birthday had passed. My birthday was in February. So what it does is it breaks you down in a way that is unimaginable. You start laughing at your own jokes, and you know, you start feeling like you're going crazy. And taking that away and replacing it with something different would be a lot more helpful. You know, I went to the hole for something I didn't do. I was only defending myself, you know, and I lost all senses, you know, and you lose yourself. They're all gone. And that's not the way to rehabilitate someone. How do you rehabilitate somebody when you take away their senses? There's no way, you know. So I am against this, and hopefully we can pass this bill and we see better things in the future for these inmates. Thank you. Have a good day.
Caller with the last 3 digits, 299. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Hello again. My name is Nicole Williams, WILLIAMS, and my loved one is incarcerated at NDOC. We also had a close friend that spent a year in solitary confinement a few years ago. Today I want to share a story. Prior to my husband's incarceration, I really believed that solitary confinement was for serious violent behavior that couldn't be addressed any other way. Unfortunately, I've learned the hard way that isn't the truth. Our friend was at camp in 2016 and was accused of selling contraband, cigarettes. He was immediately moved from camp to one of the prisons and put in solitary confinement under investigation. Ultimately, he spent just under a year in the hole, and then the charges were dropped and he was moved to general population. During the time he was in the hole, waiting for the investigation to finalize, he was not allowed to purchase additional food, and the food provided often made him sick due to dietary issues and a childhood ulcer that severely limited what he could eat. Without access to purchasing his own food, he began losing weight and lost 60 pounds. His mental health gradually deteriorated. He started hallucinating and having visions of people that had passed away over the years, specifically a best friend who died in prison from a bleeding disorder. He believed that his friend was speaking to him and warning him of a plot to kill him. He would call us and beg to help him, yet he never received any treatment or help at NDOC. Somehow his mental health screenings never identified an issue. He is home now and has never been the same. He's paranoid, anxiety have made it impossible for him to function properly in society. He now lives on the streets, is homeless, and has addiction issues. None of these things existed before he spent that year in solitary. He was always someone who deeply needed contact with his family and friends to keep him balanced while he was incarcerated. Prior to solitary, he talked to his young daughter every night, teaching her to read from behind bars. Once in solitary, he had one 15-minute call a week to try to manage all the relationships in his life. That year came at a critical point that damaged a relationship in ways that have never been able to heal. She's now a troubled teen making destructive choices, and he's homeless and addicted to drugs. This was a person with every hope of a life after prison, destroyed by solitary confinement. I watched a documentary on PBS about solitary, and a quote hit me so hard. It said, "You cannot conduct yourself as a human being when they treat you like an animal. Solitary confinement creates monsters, and they drop you into a society and say, go ahead, be a good boy." If we want results, we need to change what we put in. I am in support of SB 187. Thank you for your time, and please vote yes.
Caller with the last three digits, 826. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ayana, first name Ayanna, last name Simmons Oglesby, the latter Oglesby. And I'm calling today because I too am in support of SB 187. With all the horrible stories, my brother did 14 years in Ely, 4 years in the hole. I have letters from this man. He talks about he was there when Marilyn Monroe was murdered. He was in the car behind President Kennedy when he was assassinated. Our second grade teacher is our real biological mother. I'm getting overwhelmed now just thinking about it because it's disturbing. Zachary Simmons is his name, and he was destroyed in that institution. And he was a fine man prior to prison. The Innocent Project and different people reached out to help because they knew the case was fraudulent. But in that dispute, he ended up in the hole trying to fight for his freedom. Now, like the other caller said, they treat them like animals, but it's criminal to chain a dog to a tree. That's a criminal act in our state. But yet we treat our humans like this. Now, they create the monsters. They don't have a plan to treat and help. The mental health crisis is skyrocketed, unprecedented. Everyone that's taken an oath, you have a moral obligation to help our brothers and sisters. Again, we are Nevada strong. We are battle born. We have the resources because our population isn't like New York and all the bigger places. Vegas is only 3 million people. We have the resources, and we should be human enough to care because they're not inmates. They are people. And with that, I close. Thank you for your time.
Caller with the last three digits, 534. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin. Caller, you may begin.
Good afternoon. My name is Areli Rodriguez, Rodriguez, and my brother is currently incarcerated. He is 22 years old and has been sitting in county jail waiting for trial that keeps pushing back due to COVID. I am not a professional in prison or jail, but the more I learn, the more I know that something has to be done. So many people told their stories of how their loved ones have been impacted by solitary confinement. And now that our family is also impacted, I have started to read and learn about the things people go through in solitary confinement. They go to solitary for being belligerent or argumentative. They have gone to solitary for not wearing a mask during COVID. They go to solitary for suspicion, and while under investigation, even if it ends up being untrue, They go to solitary for having contraband, which could be anything: a cigarette, a dollar bill, a banned book, too many stamps, an extra pair of shoes, a new tattoo, certain color pens. They go to solitary confinement if they refuse anything, like a bad move. People went to solitary for refusing to take COVID tests. You can go to solitary for getting caught in door openings or closing at door calls. Then, once they are in solitary confinement, they can't order food, and the NDOC does not provide enough for a full-grown adult. I read a letter from a member of Return Strong who said hunger is the norm at NDOC. They are always hungry. So now, on top of being in solitary, they can't get any additional food. They can't have most of their personal belongings. They get one 15-minute phone call a week. Who do you call? Your parents, your siblings, your fiance, your kids? How do you maintain those relationships? They can't. Okay. They can't program or attend school. Solitary has become complete deprivation of all the things that make us human and give hope. There has to be a balance. I am in support of SB 187. Please stop this inhumanity. Thank you.
We are currently taking support testimony of Senate Bill 187. Please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Again, we are currently taking support testimony for Senate Bill 187. Please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Chair, there are no more callers in the queue for support testimony at this time.
Thank you so much. So just to clarify for the record, you've indicated that we have taken testimony from every single person who called in to speak in support of SB 187. At this time, we will move on to testimony in opposition to SB 187.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To testify in opposition of Senate Bill 187, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Again, we are taking testimony in opposition of SB 187. Please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Madam Chair, there are no callers indicating they wish to testify in opposition of the bill.
All right, thank you so much. In that case, we will move to testimony in the neutral position on SB 187.
To testify in the neutral position of SB 187, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Again, to testify in neutral of SB 187, neutral SB 187, please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits, 810, please slowly spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Madam Chair and committee members, for the record, my name is William Gitter. I am Warden of Ely State Prison, G-I-T-T-E-R-E. Should SB 187 become law, I only ask for the resources to implement its provisions efficiently and, above all, safely. Many of the problems being discussed today were already remedied following the changes made in the department starting in 2017. But further progress can always be made, and be implemented if the legislature supports it. I thank Senator Spearman and former Nevada Department of Corrections Director Zarenda for leading the changes in 2017 that improved our department as a whole, and Ely State Prison in particular. Their efforts not only significantly reduced our department's use of all types of segregation, but specifically reduced our use of disciplinary segregation by more than 90%, as codified by Department Administrative Regulations 507, 707, and 733. In 2016, Ely State Prison, our department's maximum security institution for Nevada's most dangerous and difficult to rehabilitate offenders, was 88% segregation and only 12% open tier operations. In compliance with SB 402 and the Vera Institute of Justice study, which the department commissioned, by 2018, 2 years later, Ely State Prison was the exact opposite, 88% open tier operations and only 12% segregation. Open tier operations expanded social opportunities for the vast majority of Ely State Prison's offenders and decreased offender on officer violence by 50%. At the same time, however, It led to an increase of offender-on-offender violence by 371%, hospital transports by over 100%, and life flights by over 60%. Senate Bill 187 asks us to more than double the out-of-cell time for solitary confinement inmates, an expanded definition which includes approximately 1/3 of the non-segregation inmates at Ely State Prison who are afforded group open-tier operations for slightly less than 2 hours per day. Given our decades-old construction, which was designed only to support 1 hour of out-of-cell time per segregation inmate per day, that is not safely possible without investment in physical plant improvements, additional officers, and training. I only ask for the resources to implement such improvements safely. Thank you.
Caller with the last 3 digits, 000. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin. Caller with the last 3 digits, 000. You may begin.
Hi, my name is Brian E. Williams Sr., WILLIAMS, Deputy Director of Operations, Nevada Department of Corrections. Good afternoon, Chair and the State Judiciary Committee. Thank you for the opportunity to share thank you for giving me the opportunity to share the history of NDOC segregation housing as it relates to Senate Bill 187. During this testimony, it is not my intent to oppose or support SB 187, but more so give the history and steps NDOC has taken over the 4 or 5 years in effective reduction of segregated housing and confinement settings. I hope during this testimony we can demonstrate our proactive approach in dealing with segregated housing and the multiple challenges we face in the implementation of our reduced segregated housing as it relates to SB 187. The BMU unit, this was created back in 2017, which provides services to inmates who have been identified as needing to develop skills to allow for placement in non-segregation housing following time in segregation, including interpersonal skills, hygiene, basic daily living, decreased victimization, education, anger management, adaptation to institutional environment, and compliance with institutional rules and regulations. The program participants will be evaluated as needed for socialization as a step down from segregation. We also reached out to the VEER Institute. We were not forced or told to do this. We did it on our own when our former director was here. SMI unit, as far as mentally ill inmates, the department no longer incarcerates inmates with serious mental illnesses outside of the designated mental health units on an inpatient basis, or a structured care unit on an outpatient basis, or assign disciplinary sanctions to any inmate affected by mental health concerns without first consulting a mental health professional. Inmates with mild to moderate mental or behavioral health conditions are monitored and treated as necessary by mental health professionals assigned to each institution. As it relates to Senate Bill 187, I have had conversations with Senator Spearman as well as Mr. Cheepak, and we welcome the opportunity to further discuss opportunities to improve this bill to where it's not a financial burden to the taxpayers of the state of Nevada or jeopardize the safety and security of our facilities. I would also mention that we have no issues with the new reporting requirements, but we neither have enough mental health professionals, security staff, or administrative staff to meet the requirements of this bill. Also, our director, Charles Daniel, is deeply committed to ensuring utilization of SEG as a last resort measure. Again, we welcome the opportunity to meet with Senator Spearman, Mr. Cheepak, and that Senate Bill 187 committee to further discuss our concerns, issues, as we iron out a more equitable plan for all involved. Thank you.
Caller with the last 3 digits, 789. Please slowly state and spell your name. Go ahead, caller.
I'm sorry, broadcast. Can we hang on for just one moment because I think Senator Settlemeyer popped in. Senator, please.
Vice Chair, sorry, Majority Leader. Is there any way to have the previous caller or some of these people have testified? I'd actually like to know from someone what the percentage of people is that are put into solitary confinement and what they were put into solitary confinement for. Is there any way to get that information from one of the, I was trying to catch the previous caller from the division, but I couldn't do that.
Sure. I think one, we'll make sure that we reach out to the division, or to the Department of Corrections to make sure that we can get some of those numbers and disperse that out to the committee. So we will make sure to get all of that information, because I do think that would be useful. And obviously, if we've got other folks on the line who are in neutral who may have that information readily available, we would ask for them to state that for the record, just so we have it. But I think it would be good for the committee to kind of get that just from the
Thank you, Majority Leader.
Absolutely. Broadcast, we can go ahead and proceed with the next caller and just let the committee members know to be aware that we'll get that.
Thank you. One moment, please. Caller with the last 3 digits, 789. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin.
Yes, this is Dr. David Green, Greene. I'm the Mental Health Director for the Nevada Department of Corrections. Mental health services is active in all the phases of an inmate's incarceration, beginning especially at the intake phase. So at an intake, we identify any mental health needs. We also do risk assessments to make sure that we know what the chances of the inmates recidivating might be. As a part of our services, we provide mental health services in addition to programs helping with reentry processes. I think as I've read the SB 187, the part of it that stood out for me was the introduction of the behavioral modification units. We have a couple in the state. From what's proposed, as Warden Gitter mentioned, we would need a great deal of resources to introduce those programs to make them effective, make them therapeutic communities as they should be. So as the committee is considering this bill, resources will have to be factored into your decisions. Thank you very much for your time.
We are currently taking testimony for Senate Bill 187 in the neutral position. Please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Again, we are currently taking neutral testimony for Senate Bill 187. Please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Caller with the last 3 digits, 500. Please slowly state and spell your name for the record. You have 2 minutes and may begin. Caller 500, you may begin. Please press star 6 to unmute yourself. Caller with the last 3 digits, 500. Please go ahead. Madam Chair, seems this person is not unmuting. I apologize. We are currently taking testimony for neutral position on SB 187. Please press star 6 to unmute yourself. Caller 500, you may begin.
Okay, I'm going to try again. This is Harold Wickham, Wickham. I'm also with the Nevada Department of Corrections, and I just want to thank this committee for their time and diligence on this all too important bill. And I would just like to echo the concerns of my constituents that we would love to be able to accomplish these things with the proper resources. I think that we would be able to do a great service to the state. Again, I just echo the concerns of my constituents. Thank you.
Madam Chair, there are no more callers in the neutral position at this time.
Okay, great. We will then go ahead and close the hearing on Senate Bill 187 and thank everyone who has been with us today for the testimony and presentation. At this point in time, we will move to the next item on our agenda, which is public comment, and we will turn that back over to our awesome staff over at Broadcast to facilitate with public comment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We are currently taking public comment testimony. Please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. We are currently taking public comment testimony. Please press star 9 now to take your place in the queue. Madam Chair, the public line is open and working. There are no callers in the queue at this time.
Great. Thank you so much. We will close public comment then and thank all of the committee members for being here on a Friday afternoon. That concludes our business for the day today, and we will see everybody back Monday at 1 p.m. This meeting is adjourned. Thanks all.